Hey guys, welcome back to another summer series watercolor tutorial. In this video, I'm going to show you how to create these super pretty palm trees. If you haven't checked out my other summer series videos yet, they will all be linked below, as well as links and descriptions to all of the supplies that I use in the video. So the colors that I'm going to be using for this tutorial are permanent rose, Van Dyke brown, indigo, cobalt turquoise, and also burnt sienna and sap green. I'm using Arch's cold pressed paper, and I'm just going to start by dampening that paper with clean water and a 1-inch wash brush. You definitely want your paper to be damp, but you don't want it to be puddling with water. You don't want to see any drips or puddles happening on the paper. You just want a nice shiny surface. I've mixed together permanent rose and cobalt turquoise, and I've created sort of this really light purpley shade that I'm going to be using for the background. You'll see that I just propped up the top edge of my board to allow the water to kind of flow down just slightly. It just helps with a little gravity on your side. So I've done a really light wash of that purple just to see the color intensity, and it is really, really light. So I'm going to be going over this a bunch of times with the different colors. So I'm going to be painting permanent rose on the top section, and then a mix of permanent rose and cobalt turquoise in the center portion, and then simply cobalt turquoise at the bottom. And I'm going to try to create a nice even blend of the three colors. I'm also going to be adding more pigment to the paper because I did want this to be darker. I start light and then I just kind of build up the colors as I go. So when you're doing something like this, try not to add a lot of water to your actual paint in your pan. You want to try to grab as much of the pigment from the tube as possible. You definitely can mix it with some water, but you don't want it to be so watery that you're just continually adding more and more water to the already wet paper, because that's going to result in puddles and different things that you just don't want happening. Using a blue colored pencil right now, I'm just really lightly sketching in some very basic lines of where I want the palm trees to go. I've literally just painted on the trunk of the tree and then a couple lines coming out, showing the directions that I want the top of the leaves to bend in. For the color that I'm using, I've actually mixed up a little bit of burnt sienna and sap green to create this really sort of light greeny, more sunlit looking green. I really wanted the color of this to look like it was being hit by sunlight a little bit. I am actually going to speed up this process because I do want to include a full-length video of this tutorial on my Patreon page, specifically for my patrons. And I didn't want this video on YouTube to be half an hour long, which is the actual length of the video. So I'm going to be speeding through this and just roughly explaining what I'm doing. So following those rough lines that I made with my colored pencil, I'm just using the very tip of my number 6 Wonderforce watercolor brush, and I'm creating the first line, which is going to hold all of the little brush strokes, and they're going to be positioned in all different directions. So you can kind of just watch what I'm doing here by creating the initial stem for the leaf, and then creating all of those little sort of feathery stick details coming off of them. I'm also going to include a project sketch over on my Patreon page. If you do want to become a member, click the link in my description to sign up, or wait until the end of the video and click on the link on the end screen. So this color is going to be the first layer of color, and I wanted to do more of the mid-tone color first before I go in with the darker shade, which I'm doing now in Van Dyke brown. And I'm just going over the dried areas of what I've done already and adding in some extra little strokes and making these a little bit darker in some areas. It's just going to help add a little bit more dimension and make them look a little bit less flat. You always want to keep your strokes really loose and light. So try not to push too much on the tip of the brush, just make really, really light impressions. For the trunk of the tree, I'm just going to use that same color and add a little bit of texture by creating this sort of ladder pattern down the side of it. And then do the exact same thing on the other palm tree, just using that Van Dyke brown and darkening some of those leafy areas. I'm trying to darken it more towards the center of the tree and some of the leaves that are underneath the other ones. But I definitely still want that lighter color to show through, so I don't want to completely cover up every single brush stroke that I previously did. Now I'm going to go in with a little bit of indigo. These sections have dried before I'm adding new color just because I didn't want anything to blend together. So I have waited for these things to dry before I move on to the darker shades. So I'm just going in now and adding the darkest darks using that indigo color. The reason I used indigo instead of black was because I did want it to still appear like there was a bit of sunlight, and black in nature isn't really like a real thing. It's just kind of how your eyes perceive things. So kind of layering this indigo on top of that already dark area, it just helps to darken things and create that shadow effect. You can see how much better that looks already, just adding that third layer and really making this piece look so much less flat. I'm going to do the exact same thing on the other palm tree here. Again, focusing on that center area where all of the leaves kind of combine into one cluster, and then adding a little bit more towards the edges of some of the leaves. I'm taking a white gouache right now. You can also use a white gel pen, anything more opaque, and I'm just adding on a couple little highlights. So I wanted to do a couple little strokes to some of the tips of these leaves, and also in the center area where it looks like a leaf is coming more towards us. And that's really going to finish off the piece and make this look a little bit more real. So that's going to do it for this tutorial slash demonstration, whatever you want to call it. If you guys recreate this, definitely tag me on Instagram. Be sure to give the video a thumbs up if you liked it. It helps the channel out a lot. And subscribe because I would love to have you. If you are interested in joining my Patreon, you can do so in the link below, or as I said earlier, wait until the end screen. I really hope to see you guys in the next video. Speaking of Patreon, I've just uploaded this full-length video showing you exactly how to create this lavender field painting. Thank you guys so much for watching.